sounds like that was part of her sales pitch, if you will, at least to musical theatrical folks. Is yes, I'm Mrs. Scott Joplin. Come and stay with me, and oh, by the way, come look at this great stuff I've got. But that also sort of explains why she was so tight-fisted, and possibly a good insight into perhaps why this $5,000 Treemonisha production never came off. Now, remember I said remember that Thomas fellow name. This is Joplin's death certificate, Lottie's rather, death certificate, courtesy of my colleague over here who has put down his pen. And you'll notice if you look at the name listed, she's using his name in death or on the death certificate. She's Lottie Joplin Thomas. In fact, the trust fund that she set up to be the recipient of the copyright royalty payments was the Lottie Joplin Thomas Charitable Trust. Why would she do this? Well, when you're kind of a chameleon with names anyway, I don't know that she married Thomas, but we do know that by the late 30s and early into the 40s, Joplin's name had lost some of its luster in the theatrical and musical community. Perhaps Thomas was a more familiar name to her clientele at the boarding house at this point. Who knows? But by the time she died, she was also using his name. He was staying with her as early as the 20s, as we saw, but he is listed as her companion as well. The date on here for her birth does not jive with the earlier information we saw. The interesting thing, though, the informant on this is her older brother. And the birth date that he gives as Lottie's was actually his. So how old would I can very well imagine if this man's quite elderly. How old was she when? What? How old? Oh, how old am I? Oh, okay. Things happen. Things happen. One last thing to look at. This gets really interesting, charming, and a little bit murky. Death and fraud indictments. What's going on? After Lottie died, the feds came in and charged a bunch of the folks staying in the boarding house with tax evasion. And apparently it had been going on for quite some time. Probably while Lottie was still living. So was Lottie evading taxes? Oh, I'm not going to go there. But beyond that, the description is rather interesting of what all is going on. So this are we all right over here? Do it again. It was fun.
Did you give us some of the details up there?
Yes. I'm looking for the text up here. Oh, yes. My favorite little blurb of this, you see where it says, and let me get the pointer where I'll be pointing, under Others Hunted, among the actors, singers, and musicians who drank beer at 50 cents a can at whiskey at 50 cents a glass at the house. Half a dozen or more are being sought for income tax fraud in this case. So that's an interesting image, isn't it? Of a bunch of singers and actors sitting around drinking in Lottie's boarding house. Kind of neat. Beyond that, it mainly talks about who all was getting investigated. This Mrs. Serge or Sergei was a frequent visitor. Emery Dowling. Dowling.
Didn't he just play?
Probably not the same family, you think? Was another. He was a tax collector. Now, okay, yeah. Yes. But I love this. I mean, of course, it's interesting that there was this tax investigation, but I just love this little blurb about drinking beer and whiskey. Mm-hmm. Now here's a fun part of this. Walter Thomas, the actor. Here's a great example of why you don't always take what you see in the papers at face value. Soon after Walter Joplin, husband of the landlady, became ill and died. His widow, Mrs. Lottie Joplin, was once a well-known entertainer, also died. What? Don't always take at face value everything you believe. But so who was this Lottie person? Because it is more convenient to call her Lottie than Lottie Stokes Lang Joplin Thomas. In fact, that's why I called it Learning About Lottie. It's not just you find it. It saves about half a line of type. She was a fascinating woman. Here she was, this woman who moved from a $4 a year government check as a janitor to the highest levels of African American society in New York. Shortly after Joplin's death, you find her occasionally, not just occasionally, fairly frequently, in the society sections of black newspapers as one of the people in attendance at some party or event or that sort of thing. That's a remarkable rise. She was a astute businesswoman, cunning as a fox. Absolutely fascinating. And the fact that we've not known so much about her for so long is a little bit mind-boggling. She apparently liked to keep things close to the vest. So we've got, how much? We've got 15, 14 minutes left. Do we have any questions about anything you've seen, anything you've heard? Haven't seen, haven't heard. Ed's got at least one. I know Ed's got at least a dozen, but yes.
First of all, thanks for a very provocative paper. A lot of interesting things. I want to go back to the question of whether Lottie Lang was Scott Joplin's Lottie. There are two reasons for me to question this.
Okay.
First was the different father that you listed, and the second was the different birthdays given by her brother.
If you could not hear Ed's question, he is asking about, he's uncertain about the John Lang's wife being our Lottie. And the 2 points of contention are the differing fathers listed and the birth dates on the death certificate. As I mentioned, there's plenty of reasons for a young woman to fake information on a marriage certificate. I would tend to think, and in fact I did think, that this might not have been our Lottie. However, numerous deep and intensive searches for that Lottie listed with those parameters and those parents came up with absolutely nothing. So I'm reasonably concluding that the case was in fact that Lottie, for whatever reason, elopement or something similar, decided to fake it. The second question being the discrepancy on birth date, Lottie's birth date on the death certificate. The informant on the death certificate, and if you're not familiar with death certificates, I'm sure you don't all spend all of your days looking at death certificates, do you? Unless you're an undertaker, maybe. Somebody has to provide the information. That's the informant. In this case, the informant was her older brother. And the birth date that is listed is actually his birth date, not hers. And I can well imagine that between him being elderly and possibly mourning or confused or all of the above, he simply blurted out the wrong date in giving her birth date. He actually gave his own. Yes. One more question. Oh, look at there. There's a mic.
Is it on?
Mic and Ed.
Yeah, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
Regarding the 1880 census, whether that is our Lottie or if it's a different Lottie. There is record of who our siblings were. And I wonder if they match the census siblings.
Yes. As best I've seen. As best I've seen.
What other record do you have of our siblings?
The subsequent census records for her, where I could track them.
But again, if there are two Lotties.
But that's the problem. I could not find another Lottie that got everybody in the same place that she needed to be.
Right. John was the father of Mary Wormley.
Yes.
Who inherited the Joplin estate.
Yes. She was the recipient of the trust funding.
Around 1970, some of Lottie's siblings were still living, and they signed a document saying that Mary Wormley can receive all the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't recall what their names are,
yes.
but we could consult that
mm-hmm.
to see if they match the names in the census.
By that time, they would have possibly, because by that time, the folks in the 1880 census would have, because most of the folks that were in the 1880 census were Lottie's older siblings. And by the time that document would have been signed, I would suspect that they would have all been younger, or most of them younger siblings. Lottie was only a 4-year-old in that 1880 census, and I'd have to look at it again, but I think she was, if not the youngest, close to it. If there were others born after her, I would suspect that they would have been the ones who would have signed that document.
Uh-huh.
So there's not necessarily going to be the same people turning up on the 1880 census as there would be in that document.
Thank you.
And did you also look through the derivatives, which I always do? Carlotta, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oop, yes. I spent more time on this than I really wanted to. It was one of those things that every time I found something, I was like, oh my God. And I ran out of expletives pretty quickly, pulling this all together for an English paper.
I was in the back. Was the date of that fire April 1st by any chance?
No.
Was it April 7th then?
I'd have to look, but well, we can't. Let's do that.
Because the article was like April 1st. Yeah.
It was okay.
Okay. It's a coincidence.
Yeah. Anyway,
Joplin the ghost.
something. Anyway. Well, any other questions, comments? Oh, over here on the yes. Can we run over with the mic? I can't hear a reader. Cunning. One of the things that, and this is a story that I heard from Max Morath, is that she would, well, first off, she was all over. By the way, the question was, why would I use the word cunning to describe her? First off, she was very close, private as far as keeping the name thing under wraps. Nobody seemed to really pick up on what was going on with that. If it had come out, it might have affected her ability to renew copyrights. Max Morath tells this wonderful story about uncovering where Lottie had acquired the copyrights for various tunes, and then as they would become popular, would not only sell them to the exclusive rights to a publisher, but sell the exclusive rights to 2 or 3 publishers without the others knowing.
Simultaneously, yeah.
So it wasn't just that she was a good businesswoman. She was doing stuff.
You have learned that from Fast Waller.
Conniving.
Perhaps. Well, with that, I'm going to get out of the way. We've got a little bit of time left, unless there are any other questions. If there are any other questions at this point, they will come at the cost of 1 beer during the afterglow. So I will get out of the way and allow our next presenter to... Oh, another... Oh, you have a picture of Lottie? I wish. He asked, do we have a picture of Lottie? I know of none.
No.
In fact, I know that it's been remarked upon that for somebody like as significant as she is, there exist no photos of her.
It's included with Pretty Fancy Rag.
I'm not saying nothing.
Right.
Thank you.
Brian Cather, thank you very much.